This graphic novel, written and illustrated by Jeff Nicholson, is very likely my favorite story of all time. That's because it's something I relate to on a very personal level. My experiences with job-related discontent are nearly perfectly aligned with the experiences of the protagonist, although my responses to these existential factors were entirely different, but the observations were practically identical. In fact, I once lent this graphic novel to a close friend who was just getting into reading comic books. After reading it, they thought I was trying to prank them by giving them a graphic novel I had created. It took some convincing to assure them I hadn't self-published this piece of work under a pseudonym. True story. The graphic novel itself is a series of short stories that detail the career and life of the unnamed protagonist, presumed to be a stand-in for the author, Jeff Nicholson. The protagonist works as a graphic designer for an absurd, demanding corporation. The office where he works is lined with clear, plastic Habitrails that contain gerbils. Not only do these gerbils feed off the misery of the workers, but they are also subject to the violent outbursts of the workers. Gerbils are, after all, limitless and easily replaceable when destroyed, much like the workers themselves. Every day, the protagonist is approached from behind and has a tap inserted into his head by a shadowy figure. His creativity, his personality, his essence is then slowly drained out and fed to the gerbils. This bizarre activity is simply accepted as a normal workplace practice. As an allegory, one that illustrates the soul-sucking dedication one must endure, it is sublime. To cope with this accepted level of unreality, the protagonist drinks heavily, escapes on long hiking trips, and he becomes involved with women that he seems to have nothing but contempt for. He is clearly a self-destructive mess of pain and rage, and prone to the influence of dark impulses. All of these experiences culminate in a final solution to his numb, dissatisfied existence. He is assisted and guided by an entity known as the Gerbil King. He develops a plan to minimize his existence to complete nothingness, and then into oblivion. What makes this piece work is it's an unflinching look at the protagonist, who is not all that sympathetic, to be honest. His intentions are always quite self-involved, and he engages in some highly questionable behavior throughout the series. Because of this approach, there's a level of honesty that is both disturbing and refreshing. It's fearless, and it doesn't shy away from getting into the darkness of someone's internal life, which is essentially what we witness, the internal life of a self-destructive individual who only sees that which affirms his nihilistic opinion of the people and circumstances around him. The Gerbil King is one of the most terrifying influences on the protagonist. But worst of all, the Gerbil King goes from being an influence to being a guiding force in his life. It's a quick transition once it occurs, and it's a phenomenal metaphor about how a terrible, misguided idea can cycle through your brain until it becomes a logical proposition, or until it becomes an impulse one cannot control. The artwork is surreal but not abstract, which is perfectly suited for the mood of the story. Everyone's eyes are hollow, empty. The faces are blank, expressionless masks, devoid of any detail that might indicate an internal life or an awareness of one's existence. They are all faceless nothings, as interchangeable and replaceable as the gerbils in the plastic mazes around their office. This approach enhances the sense that everyone is a meaningless, empty void. For those familiar with despair, melancholy, and working in an unnecessarily surreal environment, then I think you'll enjoy Through the Habitrails. Everyone else, especially those that prefer to read lighter, more life-affirming material, well, this might not be your thing. It should be mentioned, there are 4 different editions of this story. The 4th and final edition is available on the Kindle store. This appears to be based on the 3rd edition that was released in 2016. While this edition contains most of the original story, it has been restructured, some parts have been edited out, and there's an expanded epilogue. Personally, I prefer the 2nd edition, which was released in 1996. Just to be complete, the short stories originally ran in Taboo, a prestige format anthology series edited by Steve Bissett. It was published by Bissett under the Spider Baby Graphics imprint in association with Tundra, the publishing venture established by Kevin Eastman, the co-creator of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If that wasn't enough of a pedigree, Taboo originally published the first chapters of From Hell by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell. Furthermore, the first 3 parts of Through the Habitrails debuted alongside the first chapter of Lost Girls by Alan Moore and Melinda Gebbie. There were many other well-known, highly regarded creators that were also published in Taboo. Creators such as S. Clay Wilson, Neil Gaiman, Michael Zulli, Charles Burns, and Matt Howarth, to name a few. While Taboo would only run 9 issues in total over a period of 7 years, it was certainly a respectable series. Of all the parts that were published in Taboo and in the first and second editions, only the long chapter, Cat Lover, was removed from the 2016 edition. As stated by Nicholson in his afterword, quote, "That chapter was not originally intended as part of Through the Habitrails. It is too off-topic, overly long, and distracting from the core themes." Unquote. It is, most certainly, one of the longest portions of Through the Habitrails, and it does seem a touch off-topic in comparison to the other parts. That being said, another good reason for it being removed is it is a reasonably disturbing portrayal of the protagonist, and it contains more than a few incidents of violence against cats. Furthermore, it could be seen as a very unflattering portrayal of a real person, the titular cat lover. In hindsight, its removal may be for the best. It does stand out as an episode that's a bit of a deviation, and it reads like it's motivated by less than ideal intentions. Regardless of which edition you obtain, there's one important piece of information to remember. It's not their juice. On this day, 5 years ago, I uploaded the original version of this review. It was a day I remember distinctly because it was my birthday, and because it was the first video I created when I decided to focus exclusively on comic books. Prior to that, this channel was a little bit of everything. TV and movie reviews, short pieces of me painting, interludes, as I called them, of various locations around the city I live within, and finally, experimental short films that were weird and not all that good, but they were fun to make and piece together. Which brings me to the point of this introduction. In 2016, I shot and edited a short film titled Melancholy Overture, an unauthorized adaptation of Through the Habitrails. It was intended to be a show reel that would, perhaps, lead to an expanded, full-length version. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, that never occurred. Regardless, for your entertainment, here's a snippet of that misguided but well-intentioned short film. It was adapted, starred, and was entirely shot and edited by myself. Enjoy. Have you ever wondered if you're experiencing things that no one else is? Not because you are unique or that you possess greater perceptive powers, but because the world around you is actually different than the world surrounding everyone else. Have you ever thought of doing wrong things? Self-destructive things. Not for some cheap thrill or because you need to challenge yourself to feel alive, but because maybe what you're seeing isn't real and it needs to be tested. Tested to see if there's a reaction, to see if this world breaks down. At first, the Gerbil King allowed me to do these wrong things. Then it started helping. Now, it makes me. All that's left to say is, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, comment, and all that good stuff. Additional thanks to all those that directly support this channel and help keep the lights on. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you.